Welcome into the Husker247 Podcast. I'm Mike Schaefer, joined by Michael Bruntz, Brian Christopherson here on a Thursday afternoon. We have been all out of sorts in terms of finding any kind of routine. But the good news for you out there is that the football season starts next week, and we will be back with a more, I would say, like stringent routine of podcasts. But naturally, Nebraska has 2 Friday night games, a Thursday game. So things are going to probably get weird. But that's okay because we're Husker 24/7. We do that. All right. Michael Bruntz, Brian Christopherson with me here today. Gentlemen, we are very, very close to the season. A week from now, you would probably be in the car going to Kansas City discussing yet another Power 4 conference opener on the road. Can Nebraska get this one done? Does it feel like we're here at football season, or do you think you're going to feel that a little bit closer to next Thursday?
I haven't sprung this on BC yet, but we might be on the back nine at Cool Crest in St. Joe having that discussion. So, but yes, what was your question? Sorry, I was distracted by mini golf.
I just asked if you thought that we were in. Does it feel like football season's here? Farmageddon is 2 days from now
in Ireland.
Yes,
for two teams that are like 4 hours away. Naturally, yes, it feels like it's here. The offseason has been long and arduous, but we've made it through. Is the hay in the barn now officially for us? Like for Nebraska fans and media, is the hay in the barn? No.
BC, what do you think?
No, it's not in the barn until depth chart. Until we get a depth chart.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay.
Well, we don't have a depth chart.
We can still speculate on one though.
It's reckless speculation time for us, and you don't have to take it overly serious. We'll try to take it serious. So I guess with that, let's kind of dive into some position battles because I think this is sort of what we want to see on the depth chart. First, let me ask this, Bruntz. Are they just going to drop a bunch of oars on us and sort of remove even any value whatsoever that the depth chart could add?
Did you guys see what Western Kentucky did? Speaking of this, their depth chart was listed numerically. So it was like quarterbacks, number 1, like the guy whose jersey number is number 1. Second line, guy whose jersey number is number 2. And like they did that for every position. I think there should be an unwritten rule that for depth chart releases, you only get 3 oars.
Oh, wow.
And you better use them well. So we're gonna get some oars. It's gonna be like a big canoe convention, I think, in some ways, but at some spots. But I am a proponent of 3 oars on depth charts, and that's your max. Once you use them, you got to make a decision. So
just total, not just position groups. Like, does it count as like if you use 2 at the running back spot? That's 2 of your 3, or is it just 1?
Well, last year they had 3 there, right? Because there were
use them up on one position.
Or I think Matt Rule would be weirdly okay with that. I think he'd find humor in it, and then it would be almost a challenge, which then we know he appreciates. So you might want to bring that up to him.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're going to have time to be able to pull this off, ahead of the impending depth chart. But for the 2026 season, this could be an entire team effort that we just drop by with the Nebraska staff. Like, hey, have you considered this? Will you be willing to do this? Can we get you to pledge to 3 oars or less?
There's unwritten rules in baseball. I don't understand why there can't be unwritten rules in depth charts. It all makes sense to me.
I don't know. Are there even written rules in depth charts? That's probably the problem here. There's no written rules or standards. There's no Robert's Rules of Order or whatever for depth charts.
There's expectations. I want decisions. People want finality in that first depth chart, and I think after basically 9 months of no football, I think a little finality is okay. I think that would be in order.
I'm trying to remember. Have we had years where there wasn't even a depth chart the first week? I think we have. I mean, that's always a possibility too. So
Yeah.
it could be a deal where here it is and you'll like it, and we'll accept that.
I can only remember where we didn't get travel rosters because the head coach and his chief of staff were upset about things that were being written. I can't remember no depth chart. So
yeah, I don't know. Maybe it feels like maybe one season or two where there wasn't actual printout before the game, but I could be wrong on
COVID?
that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just imagining that they, stuff runs together. You could stuff from other teams like that has happened sometimes seeps in your brain, and you think that happened in Lincoln, and it didn't actually.
That's fair. So, well, let's try to take people inside, not necessarily the depth chart, because I don't think there's like a lot of really sort of exciting stuff we're going to learn off of the depth chart. I mean, a lot of your offensive positions, it feels pretty straightforward, but there are a few spots where we could gain some clarity. And so I think let's try to dive into a few of those here today. And we're going to start at one. It's technically two, but it's just one position, and that's a tackle. And you have your left tackle, your right tackle. We've had quite a battle between Gunnar Gatula and Elijah Pritchett with the left tackle spot. Over at right tackle, Teddy Prohaska, Tyler Knack. Are we saying Turner Corcoran's in the mix there, or is it really just the first two?
I think it would be hard for Turner to jump right in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the season and take one of the starting lines, if that's the question. I do think though, he would be a name that's a possible if you were to use one of your oars in that backup line. And what we know though is he's been working at both tackle spots, Donovan Raiola said, and we've always been big fans of the idea of him at guard, and Donovan Raiola calls him an all-5 player. And so I just think somehow, some way he's going to factor into this season at some point. I don't know where it's going to be. There might be an injury or whatever, but I think on the initial depth chart, it's probably going to be the main four we've talked about with Turner's name just somewhere there. That would be my prediction.
Brunt, I guess we'll start with you. How would you size up what's happening here in camp? You don't have to say right now who you think is going to be what, but just how did we end at this position battle? And are you surprised we don't have clarity at either tackle spot here on August 21st?
Not particularly surprised. I mean, I think if you just listen to Matt Rule and what he's saying, especially when he's asked about the tackle spot, I think there's probably some behind the scenes motivation going on with Elijah Pritchett. I think a lot of people had him kind of written in marker at that left tackle spot. And I mean, I think to Gunnar Gatula's credit, he's made that a battle. And, the thing that makes that so difficult, I think, to kind of, as we sit here, to kind of know what that's going to look like when the first release comes out, is the willingness to move guys. I don't think we've seen a lot of scenarios where, Nebraska's moved, tackles to different sides and just kind of talked about it before the season in that way. And I think that's kind of the wild card is who are your two best tackles in that group? And if they're on the same side now, I mean, how willing are you to move them? And Matt Rule said that they're at least willing to explore that. So that I think is kind of the one thing in the back of my mind that gives me a little bit of pause from saying this is what the group is going to be when they get down to Kansas City on Thursday, is at least the possibility that currently your two best tackles are on the same side of the line of scrimmage right now.
BC, 3 of those 4 have starting experience. Obviously, Pritchett at Alabama. Gatula got a bunch of starts last year when Teddy Prohaska got hurt. Teddy Prohaska has had starts in 21, 22, 23, and then was hurt in 24 and missed all of that season. And then you have Tyler Knack. How did Tyler Knack get into the mix here as the one guy? And with apologies to Turner Corcoran, I'm just sort of leaving him off of this, I guess. But he also has starting experience. How does Tyler Knack get into the mix here as sort of the one guy who doesn't have that experience to draw off of?
Well, I think he's at a more natural position than a season ago. He was working at guard, and now at tackle. It just fits his game better. He said as much, and really, I think he has a sort of determination about him that started late last season. He had an injury. He was out for the bowl game, and he was basically like, I am going to get back in time for mat drills, and I'm going to be a factor. And he has driven himself to have a shot at it. And you have to admire that. Off the field and all that other stuff, he's a really good ambassador for the program with recruiting and all those visits. But I think when Dana mentions like we feel good about 8, I think he's in that 8 now. And I mean, that's a real credit to him, because he was probably, to the fans and media, honestly, last year, kind of an afterthought guy who came from Utah originally. That was his first program, and people kind of forgot about him. But he took the first snap of fall camp at right tackle. And so we can't just dismiss that he's right in that mix too. Now it does seem like Teddy, whenever his name has been brought up, Teddy Prohaska, has been really moving around like his old self prior to the injuries, from everything we've been told. And so, I mean, you know what a massive man he is. And if he could ever have that full run of good health, there's so much potential that's in him. It's just a matter of if he can have that. And I think right tackles is interesting as left, because Tyler's had a great offseason, and Teddy worked himself back from his rehab to at least look like he did prior to the injury, I think.
Brunts, over on the left side, we don't know quite enough about Elijah Pritchett because we haven't really gotten to see him with our own eyes. I mean, maybe you really locked in this offseason and watched all 30 of every Alabama game so you could get familiar with Elijah Pritchett. But we did see quite a bit of Gunnar Katula. He had off-season surgery, so he wasn't available in the spring. What do you remember about Gunnar Katula and his play in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, he was in a kind of a tough spot. I mean, let's be honest. You have all the injury issues that happen, and all of a sudden you're pretty far into your depth. And I think to his credit, he stepped up and played relatively well. I think we have 11 starts last year, 9 starts, 11 games, 9 starts. And I think for a young guy like that, sometimes like just kind of being thrown into it isn't a bad setup, because you're just kind of thrown in. You've got to try to swim, keep your head above water as you're learning things. You're going through the Big Ten, and he did relatively well. And he was a fringe 4-star kid out of Lincoln Southeast, so it's not like he was a scrub by any means. But he had to learn on the job, and the other thing that I think kind of helped him, and I think this helps young guys sometimes, it's like, they not only did he have to go in there and play, but like Nebraska really needed him to play well, because there wasn't much tackle depth, beyond that what they had. I mean, I know they moved Mizuka a little bit to different spots at tackle to help out with some depth there, but I thought he played relatively well last year, especially given the circumstances, and the indications are that that growth has not stopped. So I think just having it's one thing to have options at tackle. It's another thing to have options where you have, I guess I'll include Corcoran back in this conversation, but you've got that number of guys with significant starting experience. I mean, that's a good problem to kind of have to suss through, even if you're, getting down to the end here to make that decision.
All right, BC, what's your best guess right now? Who's your starting left tackle, right tackle for the Cincinnati game? Just a guess. You're not going to be held to this. We certainly won't mock you if you are completely and utterly wrong. Nothing like that.
I'll stick with what I said at the beginning of camp and just go with it. Pritchett on the left, Prohaska on the right. But I will say, on Saturday after the scrimmage, obviously people paid attention to Rule's comments. Elijah had some work to do, and as he talked about, got people pouring into him, and just sort of a motivational sort of line, I think, about Elijah. And the one guy of all the he kind of mentioned all the names, but the one guy he really highlighted as he's having a really good practices in camp was Gatula. Like he went to that twice. Like he's playing really well now. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if Gatula's out there on in a starting spot. But I'll go with what I said with at the beginning of camp and see if I got it right with the P and P connection on each side.
Do we leave the door open for a rotation? Like is that position right for a little bit of a rotation?
Have they ever rotated though with their offensive line?
They haven't much. There was a guard spot a few years ago that the snaps I think were fairly.
Lutovsky was involved with it, right?
Yeah. Who was he rotating with? I forget. But no, they have not. But I do wonder if it's at least a conversation, if all things being equal. I'll go along with BC and I'll say Pritchett and Prohaska to start, but I don't think the gap is wide there.
At some point this year, this is my oddly specific prediction. Actually, it's not oddly specific, just a prediction. At some point this year, the starting tackles are going to be Pritchett and Gatula from left to right. Like they're their two best. I think it's their two best tackles. I think they're just fighting this at this point. And so unless there's just a reason that they can't get Pritchett in Sharpie, and you got to have Gatula available to play left tackle at some point. Otherwise, I think it's going to get there. So we will see. Before we move off of the offensive line, I want to ask this question because it sort of fascinates me. I'm probably going to throw it on our message board right after this podcast. Based on everything you know and any of the film that you've watched of Nebraska's offensive linemen, who do you think Nebraska's best lineman, pound for pound, regardless of position, whatever it is? I don't care what your metric is. Who do you think Nebraska's best offensive lineman is, Brian Christopherson?
Lutovsky. It snuck up on a lot of us last year because he had the injury actually late in camp. People forget that. And so it was a slow burn into his season in a way. But when you got to like late October, November, it wasn't every week, but there were specific weeks where when you went through and really watched the front five, he was more consistent than anybody. And now, Justin Evans, they're really excited about what he can do at center. I just can't say his name at this point for that answer because we haven't seen him really at that position yet. Let's at least see it first. Obviously, Rocco's got experience, but I'm going to say Ludo. I just think, and he's looks good right now. Like he's in the best we've ever seen him, and that's why he's my answer.
Brunch, you got anything different?
I was going to go with Evans.
I was going to go with Evans as well.
I don't mind that. I'm glad it's different.
BC can't do it. He doesn't want to join our Justin Evans agreement.
Idiot.
It's idioto. You're right that you haven't seen much center, but I think he was quietly a very, very good guard last year.
Yeah, he was.
I like the demonstrative head shake from BC.
Yeah.
Just disgusting.
I'm joking. I like when we have different ideas.
Embrace
we don't have it
debate,
enough on
BC. Embrace debate.
Yeah.
But I do think he's a good center. I think he's got the right attitude. I think he's a smart football player. And I don't know. Like I sometimes like interior offensive linemen that kind of have that feel like they've got an axe to grind and they kind of been overlooked their whole careers. Like I just like when you see Justin Evans, you're like, that guy, that is what an offensive lineman, like just the attitude. So I'm going there. That's my answer.
I'm also going with Evans. Some of it is just like maybe it's just my imagination run wild. Doesn't it seem easy to sort of like Dana Holgerson's going to have him snap and pull a little bit and get him out in motion? Like I think we're going to see some Justin Evans, pulling from the center spot. And kind of that play that they ran a little bit against Wisconsin where you're able to get Emmett Johnson out to the edge and you got a pulling lineman there. And I just have this picture of Justin Evans picking people off as Emmett runs by him. And so I think Lutovsky's good. as well. I think there's a chance that maybe he's the best right now. I think if someone is going to end up, having their name in an all-conference discussion, it wouldn't shock me if one of the five, had it happen. It wouldn't shock me if it was Justin Evans. I think they really like him. I think they really, really like him. They speak highly of him. I think his athleticism fits the center position well. So as long as the snaps, there's no issues there, I think he's going to have a really nice season ahead. I'm actually pretty bullish on the line in general, but specifically the three interior guys. I think it's a nice setup for Nebraska in 2025. Let's dive over to another position grouping that we kind of want to break down here that should be interesting when the depth chart comes out, and that's over in the defensive backfield. I think we have a fair idea of a lot of the names, but maybe not necessarily in what order or maybe even position for some of them. Brunts, you kind of thought this would be a good spot to go. Why do you think there is a little bit of intrigue about what happens with the depth chart over there? Even though it feels like you can say Deshaun Singleton, Marquise Buford, Sierra Wright, Malcolm Hartzog, I think Andrew Marshall, like all of those guys seem like they're going to be in the mix for something, whether it's nickelback, cornerback, safety. But what are you thinking here?
I think it's intriguing because I think if you did like a third of the way through the season depth chart look again, it feels that group more than about any feels like the group where the depth chart could be markedly different. Like it feels like the gap between the starters and the second unit guys in the secondary it's much narrower than it is at other positions on the field. And I think that's why it's interesting to me.
The young guns are ready to make a move is what you're saying.
Yes. I mean, just Donovan Jones is a good example from last year. Like, gets in the bowl game, didn't look out of place at all. I mean, I think if a guy gets an opportunity like that, I think they're in better position this year to just have somebody run with that opportunity and win the job or keep the job. So no, I think you're right. I mean, I think the only real intrigue is whether it's Andrew Marshall that's opposite of Sierra Wright for the most part.
Who's the other option? Jones, Jeremiah Charles
Jones. Feels like Khan's probably a backup to Hartzog. I think if we were just based on what he's going to be asked to do. Amari Sanders is, in that group as well. But I mean, I would be surprised if Donovan Jones, who's working at corner, is not the number two behind a solid number two behind one of those guys. But like I said, I mean, I think my reason for kind of focusing on the secondary a lot is it just feels like there's a ton of guys, first of all. Like, they just have a massive number of scholarship guys in that secondary. I think they've also done a pretty good job of identifying guys and also developing them, in spite of the fact that, again, you have the annual turnover in the defensive backs coach group. But I think having Phil Snow work with those DBs, I think John Butler being a defensive backs guy, Addison Williams also being there, it feels like there's, a lot of those younger guys I think are going to be coming along sooner than later if they can keep those guys all in place.
BC, do you think we were talking offensive line rotation, but do you think we could see more rotating in the defensive backfield, a little bit more similar to 2023, where it felt like they went a little deeper there than last year, where they really kind of hung in with their primary guys in the secondary?
Yeah, I kind of expect that. And it goes back to a comment even Rule said in the spring about we want to play a lot of guys back there. Now, it's harder to do, it feels like to me, sometimes at corner, isn't it? I mean, that's one of those positions on a football team where you kind of like your two guys. If they're really playing well, you like them kind of locked in there. There's that comfort level. And like, if you go look at snap counts at the end of the season, usually there are two corners who are just far above everybody else. There's not like this deal where it's really close. So I do wonder about that spot if Marshall, because I think it'll be Marshall still, and Sierra Wright just kind of dominate there, or if someone else can push that. But I think elsewhere, like Jameer Khan, we heard about him a lot this last week. I mean, obviously they love what he's made of, and I could see him slipping in for snaps and certain packages. Caleb Benning. There's guys we haven't talked as much about, like Rex Guthrie and guys like that I think are interesting if they pop up on the depth chart. And then like, okay, what does that mean on Thursday? That'll be the most interesting part. Like there might be a surprise name like on the depth chart in that secondary, but then it'll be like who on that second line, how much do they actually play at Arrowhead in that first game? I think it will be more like 23 though, to your question, where I think you're going to see them put a lot of guys out there at different times.
Let's jump to another spot. Brunch, do we know who's going to be the place kicker?
As of now, we don't. They wanted a decision late this week. I mean, just based on what little we've seen, I mean, I thought the ball looked pretty good coming off of Kananen's foot, but
Andy talked to the media.
Well, that always helps. But I don't know. It'll be interesting too. Like if the guy that wins it too doesn't start fast, how quick the hook is there. Especially when you have that good options. So or that close options. But I think I'd lean there first, just with what I've seen.
You guys have, you got any
different thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say any differing thoughts there?
No, I mean, I know we're supposed to embrace debate, but I would say Kunanen is my prediction. But that's one of those deals where they're charting it all camp, and so I guess like you don't know what happened the last 5 days. Like if someone is missing and someone else is on a roll, and the numbers look better for him, but. There's minor details. I don't think it is a minor detail. Maybe it's because he's a new guy and it was just his way. But he came up, as you know, Schaefer did an interview with you and others. Kunanen did, and so that sometimes is a little bit of a tell. Sometimes guys that are tracking well who come up and talk. And then at the open scrimmage, they did 8 kicks in front of us. He happened to make his 4 and. Hole made 3 and Alvano made 1 by my tracking. And I thought he does have the ball does explode off his foot maybe a little bit better, I thought, but that was a very amateur view of it.
Yeah, I'm just going entirely off of the fact they put him in front of the media. Might mean something, might mean nothing. He was really good in that role. Again, might mean something, might mean nothing. Who's to say? But it's a sweep for us with what happens at kicker, at least in terms of our predictions. Let's finish up with this here. We've had a bunch of people roll through in the last week or so that have talked. We're clearly flooding the bench at the end of fall camp to get some different people out in front of the cameras and have some different conversations. Is there anyone that has stood out for you? Could be a player, could be a coach, could be a quote. Anything here, and let's just condense it to this week only because there was a couple different media appearances before Matt Rule will talk tomorrow. Brunt, any one individual appearance that you would highlight over others from just this week alone? Won't let you go back to last week.
Yeah, I thought 2 guys were good to hear from. I thought Jameer Khan was great. When he was up there, I thought, he talked in the spring too, so it wasn't completely new. Khan didn't. Khan was new, but Marquez Watson Trent, I don't know. Like he just talks like a guy that's been through college football, is extremely focused. I think he's going to have, a lot to say at that linebacker spot. Just with his past productivity. And I think my sense is that he kind of like Vincent Shavers are very, very good going downhill, going forward, attacking. And I think that's what the idea is going to be with the defense. So those 2, I think, stood out the most. I thought Matt Rule's quote about the fact that how they're going to go this year is going to matter, or is going to be dependent on how the 2s and the 3s operate coming out of that scrimmage. I thought that was a pretty telling quote as well. I mean, I think they've got depth. I think they also just need guys that are in those second and third team spots to be ready to go. Because, I mean, we've seen through the years, I mean, how quickly you can get through it, and all of a sudden a guy's in there when it matters. So those two players at a quote, those two stood out to me.
BC, anybody else you'd like to highlight
Sure.
after Brunts went there?
He didn't come up front, but he was still prominent in the stories, was Jalen George. And the fact that when we went over there with our open session and had the cameras on, the green jersey was off like a week ago. That was a big deal. You're like, okay, we're tracking that more now. And then Rule had the comments Saturday after the scrimmage about Con and Jalen George and just how they handle their business and how much he appreciates it. And that's noteworthy. So you stack one more clue up. And then yesterday, sort of a surprise, the question was, but it ended up producing a good answer, was EJ Barthel was asked about the D line and what they're kind of showing its competitors. And he said a lot of us offensive coaches are really impressed with Jalen George. And, obviously it's been building steam there. And so at a position where we talk about like, okay, who's like the 5th, 6th, 7th guys, are they going to have that depth? That's an interesting development as we're a week from the season, if he can fit in there and give you some quality snaps even early on.
All right. Football season approaching very, very quickly. We will be back with another podcast, a Husker247 podcast on, do we want to say Tuesday next week? Is that what we're shooting for? And then we'll have the Hypecast will go up on Wednesday. And then we'll have the Thursday game, in which we'll have a post-game podcast that I will be doing Thursday night that's going to get released to whoever wants to listen well after we move into Friday morning. The Sunday side session is returning. I've already got someone on the hook for that. Boys, we're really getting into football season, which means a lot of podcasting coming our way. So people need to be checking that out. Hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcast so you can have it delivered to you instantly. If you watch us on YouTube, like and subscribe there. We really appreciate it. Hoping to have a lot of verbal content, some visual content if you're a YouTube watcher as well this season. So a lot of stuff going on. And of course, everything else you can find at Husker247.com. So for Michael Bruns, for Brian Christopherson, I'm Mike Schaefer. We're Husker 24/7. We'll catch you next time.